Well, hello, welcome back to Rankin' Records. This is Mike from Music City. Today we're going to look at another year and pick out some of my favorite records from that year. We last left off, I believe, at 81, and instead of going forward to 82, we're going to pick up, we started at 78, we're going to go back to 77. So, little twist to it. And instead of picking 10, I've got 13. So we're going to go through three sort of bubbling under ones that I feel are worthy of mention. And let's see how you agree with these, and like to hear what your favorite records from 77 were. But before we get started, please, if you haven't done so far, hit that subscribe button. We're trying to get our subscribers up, and I don't want you to miss on any future content. We're going to do an artist next here that I'll keep secret for now, but working on that. But let's go ahead and look at the records that I enjoyed most in 1977. And a big year in music, and really, in a lot of respects, that the first year that punk rock really came to vinyl, and you'll see that in some of these selections. But number 13, we're going to start off with an oddity, and I just had to mention this record because I really did like it back in the day, and I still like to listen to it today. And that's Meatloaf's Bat Outta Hell. And here we even got a picture disc version. Remember picture discs and when they were popular back then? But you know, it was a good record. It was a great live show. Meatloaf and his collaborating partner Jim Steinman really put some great stuff together. It was very over the top, very Phil Spector-esque, you know, a lot of Springsteen element to it. But you know what? They should have just stopped here. I mean, we got part 2, 3, 4. I don't know how we went on forever, and I think they beat it to death. But I think if you go back, this still is a pretty enjoyable record to go back and listen to. Now, number 12, you know, he mentioned punk rock, and I'm going to pick one up that I really feel deserves mention, and that was the debut of the Boomtown Rats. You know, came out of Ireland. You know, it seems like a punk band sprang up everywhere, and I really enjoyed this. Not my favorite record by the Rats, but I think a good introduction to them. And again, we mentioned Springsteen influence on Meatloaf. I mean, a lot of people thought there was a Springsteen influence in here, and again, yeah, I think so in terms of Geldof's lyrical content of being music from the streets, and maybe a little bit with the horns and things like that, you know, saxophone. But anyway, a good record, one worthy of mention. And then number 11, before we get to the top 10, I really want to mention Randy Newman's Little Criminals. A very good record, and to me it was really a joy because it really brought Randy's music out more to a wider public audience. You know, when he had his hit on here, Short People. I mean, yeah, I mean, I'm sure Randy doesn't want to be remembered for Short People. Great, you know, bit of tongue-in-cheek humor about it, but still a good song in itself. But a good record, and it did lead a lot of people to go back and discover some of his other great music. One of our American treasures in terms of songwriters, Randy Newman. All right, let's get into the top 10. Now, I think back then a lot of bands sort of rode on this cusp of the punk and new wave scene, who really got categorized as being part of it, but they really were more in terms of a lot of the classics elements of rock and roll. And no better example than I think the band Mink DeVille. I mean, yeah, Willie DeVille had this tough look, hard-edged band, but you know, he owed more to, you know, people like Doc Pomus and music of the 50s, and even he covers a Barry Greenwich Spector song "Little Girl" on here that shows you really where his style came from. But I mean, he had that tough, gritty stuff and had a little bit of a Latin edge to it. Songs like "Mix Up, Shook Up Girl," "Spanish Stroll." He even does a song by one of my favorite artists, Moon Martin. He does "Cadillac Walk." Got to see them back at a club in Manhattan called Great Gildersleeves back around this era, and it was a great live show. Sadly, Willie's not with us anymore, and I don't know how much you know about his career, but sort of I guess his biggest career moment was he had the soundtrack song for Princess Bride, Storybook Love. I don't think it won the Academy Award, but boy, I sure would love to find that video of him singing it on the presentation, which I believe he did. But again, number 10, Mink DeVille, great record, one of the best debut records out there too. Number 9, Ramones, Rocket to Russia. Now, I got to be honest with you. In '76, when the Ramones' first album came out, I wasn't much of a fan. Kind of much same of the shock that I went through when I first heard the New York Dolls. I just didn't get it. It took a while to sink in. Rocket to Russia really had, I think, the Ramones were starting to write better songs, more in a poppy vein. And gosh, I mean, Rockaway Beach, Sheena is a Punk Rocker. Fantastic record by the Ramones, and it made me a fan. I looking back, I regret I only got to see the Ramones once. I saw them in CBGB's in 1976, and it was kind of weird. I mean, remember, even they had seats, and we sat. There was only maybe about 6 or 7 rows of seats sitting in front of the small stage when it was up in the front of CB's. Had another ticket to see him opening for Patti Smith one time down the Jersey Shore, and we got there too late, and I missed him. So I really regret not following the Ramones a lot more back in the day. But Rocket to Russia is my number 9. Now, number 8 might be a surprise for some of you, but it's a record I loved tremendously back in '77, and that was Ghost Rider by Garland Jeffrey. Sort of a kind of return for Garland. He had put out this great single called Wild in the Streets a few years earlier, and actually he did a new version of it for this record. It's really a classic song that I think you really should check out. You know, Garland was a great performer back in the day, had a really good stage presence. I saw him several times at the Bottom Line. New York City Skyline, a great song on here. Some great rockers, 35mm Dreams and Cool Down Boy. Just a good, tough, gritty edge. Another guy sort of just sneaking in, you know, really wasn't punk or new wave, but I just think that the energy that those genres were creating, you know, let a guy like Garland slip in, and he was still doing it today. I saw him a few years ago. He played here in Nashville at the Basement. It was fantastic. If you don't know this record, I really think you need to check it out. Number 7, a record I think we talked about a little bit when we covered the Music of Rock Pile. Dave Edmunds' Get It. Really the first time on vinyl where he got together with his feature partner in Rock Pile, Nick Lowe. A great record. It's got some of the best Lowe Edmunds collaborations. Here Comes the Weekend is on here. I Knew the Bride, When She Used to Rock and Roll, Nick's song. Just a good record from start to finish. Also got Terry Williams from Rock Pile on drums. We didn't have Billy Bremner with them yet, but again, just a great roots rock record. And again, you know, Edmunds another guy who sneaks into this new wave cover in a couple of years with Lowe, and good record. So we're down, and we got 6 left, and now let's start to look at some of the punk stuff. And the first one is going to be the debut album of The Clash. I gotta admit, I'm not the hugest Clash fan in the world. I have a lot of respect for them, and this was a record that came out in the UK in '77. It didn't come out in the States till a little bit later, but we'll go back to this. And even when it came out in the States, they had to throw I Fought the Law in there, you know, which had come out later. And I really didn't think that did such a great service to the band, because here they are, you know, writing some great original stuff, and you've got them people, you know, wanting to hear their cover version of the Bobby Fuller 4 song. So not what they're all about, but a great strong record, and you know, the Clash truly were an important band, and there's no doubt about it. I think I learned I liked some of their later records better, but this record really set the world on fire, as did this one. We've talked about this earlier. The only record ever to come out of the Sex Pistols. Just the raw power and energy of this record, it's just hard to match, and it did. Any way you look at it, it changed rock music. Never mind the bollocks. Here's the Sex Pistols. Just, you know, still holds up today. It's just a great record. Number 4, a record that I really loved back then and still love today. The debut record from Ian Dury, and it's not with the Blockheads yet. The Blockheads played on this but didn't get the credit yet. I had to double check. New Boots and Panties on Stiff Records, and you know, interestingly enough, he really was the star of the Stiff Records label in England. He not so much here in the States. I only got to see Ian Dury once. He toured with opening for Lou Reed. I got to see him at the Capitol Theater in Passaic. I think it's the only time he's been in the States. I know he did play a show at the Bottom Line that I had to miss. And I never forget the cool thing about the show. Of course, you know, one of the signature tracks off this record. Let me just, yep, I just want to make sure it just wasn't a single, but Sex and Drugs and Rock and Roll. And he had this big bag, and he would throw out badges. And if you got all of them, they completed the set, Sex and Drugs and Rock and Roll. And I do have a whole set somewhere in one of my drawers. But just a fantastic record. Dory had so much charisma, and he was just a very unique style. It's very British, maybe why he wasn't so popular in the States, but you know, Wake Up and Make Love to Me is on this, such a great record. And you know, he showed what a great songwriter he was. I'm trying to remember My Old Man. You know, he could write a ballad and sing it in a just wonderful British vocal style of his. If you want to know more about Ian Dury, make sure you read the great book by Will Birch, biography of Ian Dury. Is fantastic. And he would put out a lot of great music after this. But again, his debut, he was with a band called Kilburn and the High Roads. Before that, a pub rock band. But good place to start with Ian Dury, New Boots and Panties. Now, number 3, we're gonna do a big genre shift here, but I don't know how I could ignore this record, Asia by Steely Dan. You know, most likely their most successful commercial record, but still, it was just a solid record. It's one of those records that every track on the record is just fantastic. You had the pop hit in Peg. You've got, you know, classics like Deacon Blues, Josie, and the title track Asia. Just a fantastic record. They got this. They hit, you know, big commercial payday for them. Well deserved. We did a separate Rankin Records on Steely Dan, one of my all-time favorite bands. Kind of, you know, it managed to shine through. All of this wasn't the most, you know, popular genre for a lot of us back then, but I still think it's one of their best records, and certainly one of the records I played a lot in 1977. We got 2 more to go. Now, this one I got at number 2, I got to be honest with you, I was sort of lukewarm at it at the time, but the more and more I got to hear this record, and when I finally, a couple of years ago, got to see the band live, to me, this is just one of the most important records to come out in 1977, and that's Marquee Moon, the debut record by Television. Just a brilliant, brilliant record. Not only did I get to see Television twice, I drove down to Athens, Georgia to see them. They played here in Nashville. Richard Lloyd, the guitar player in Television, who doesn't tour with them anymore when they get back together, he actually lives in Knoxville, Tennessee, and he'll come to Nashville a couple of times. Like, I saw him at the Basement, and although wasn't the lead singer, you know, as you know, of course, Tom Verlaine was. He does most of those Television hits, and just to hear him recreate his original guitar work is fantastic. But Tom Verlaine, just an amazing musical composer and artist. As a band, they were just fantastic. I think the sticker on this record, this is actually the Rhino reissue, said something like bringing jazz into punk rock or something. Yeah, I mean, there was a musical sophistication about Television that was different from a lot of the bands of their age, you know, the Talking Heads and the Ramones and Blondie, the CBGB scene. But again, and that was also, don't forget, they're the first band to really play at CBGBs and get that scene started. So again, number 2 record of that year for me, Television, Marquee Moon. The follow-up, I believe, Adventure Week, I might have had in '78 too. Okay, number 1, you know, I was kind of in a dilemma that, you know, trying not to so much spotlight my favorite artists. And when I was at 81, if I went to 82, Imperial Bedroom came out that year. And if I went to 77, My Aim Is True came out that year. I mean, 2 albums that are just masterpieces. How can we not pick Elvis Costello's debut album, My Aim Is True, as the best record or my favorite record of 1977? This record just changed my life. You know, it's just remarkable, and showed that a singer-songwriter like Costello could have a strong career, you know, in this punk new wave era. You know, Graham Parker maybe was a little bit ahead of him, showing that too, and then Joe Jackson followed. And it was really nice to see that these singer-songwriters, you know, there was a place for them in today's genre. the thing about this record is that you think about all the classic Costello tracks that came off of it, and let me just, I don't want to miss anything, but you know, Allison, Red Shoes, Less Than Zero, Mystery Dance, songs that he probably plays every day. The American version added Watching the Detective. I mean, not every day, he plays every show. What a fantastic record. It really changed my life. I became a huge Costello fan. And you know, spent a lot of my life following his career. And look at this! I love these promos with the time strips back then. I love to collect them. But again, what a great record. We're gonna probably do a feature some point in time on great debut records, and I think you'll have to see this again. But my #1 record, my favorite record from 1977, Elvis Costello's "My Aim Is True." So another great year for music. I don't know where we'll go next, to 76 or 82. We'll see as time comes. Thank you for supporting us. Please hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, share these on your socials. And this is Mike from Music City signing off. And I want to show you my T-shirt. We Will Rise. The Basement East, one of my favorite venues in Nashville, got clobbered by the tornado back in March, but they will be back. I've already got tickets for a show coming up next year, assuming, of course, we're able to be out in public again. But take care. Thanks for watching.